that retention piece and really considering the lifetime value of each and every, customer is really, it's massive.
Are you trying to employ people? Are you just trying to make money and then sell and retire? Are you trying to do something good for the community? What are you trying to accomplish? Ideas come in and things like that. And so it's been hard to maintain the core values, but I'm dedicated to maintaining that for years to come.
Hello, friends. I'm Adam Loveridge. Welcome to the Home Services Marketing Podcast, Growth to Acquisition. I'm the owner and founder of Job Calls. We're a home services marketing agency specializing in heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and remodeling contractors. For more information about Job Calls, visit us online at www.jobcalls.com. Hello and welcome to the Home Services Marketing Growth to Acquisition podcast. My name is Adam Loveridge with Job Calls, and I am joined here today with Anthon Mecham from Authority Heating and Cooling. Anthon, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Hey, it is absolutely my pleasure. I'm stoked about this particular interview because you're right here in my backyard in Orem, Utah. Is that correct?
Yep, based in Orem, Utah.
Fantastic. So before, I guess, just diving in here, tell me a little bit about Authority. How long have you guys been in business?
Okay, we started a business in 2006, and so it's coming on 20 years.
Fantastic. And was this your first, segue into HVAC, or did you start in the industry?
I had been to school in HVAC right out of high school. I took a trade school in Phoenix, Arizona, Universal Technical Institute, where I learned heating and air conditioning. And then I had worked for a couple of years with a company doing new construction. And then I switched to a company where I learned a lot of service work. And so I worked for about maybe 7 or 8 years total in the industry before I started Authority Heating and Cooling.
Fantastic. And tell me a little bit about where you guys are now as a business. How many trucks do you have on the road, revenue, that sort of thing?
We've grown pretty heavily in the past 6 months. I mean, we had about 35 to 40 last year, and then now we have about 52, 53.
Oh, wow.
And we did a little over 7 million last year. We're on target to do, it might be closer to 8.5 to 9 this year.
That's fantastic. What has been the primary reason that you guys have grown so much in the last year?
I think it's taken a long time to figure out how to run a business. Legitimately, it took a long time to build up relationships with contractors and customers, learn processes and procedures. We had some coaching over the past several years, which has really helped us. And just a combination of quite a few things, I think, that it just took a long time to really understand what we were doing, and I feel like we're in a really good growth path now.
So you obviously do new construction and residential service. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fantastic. And what percentage would you say of your business is each?
It's approximately maybe 40% of new construction, and the rest of it is service and retrofit. What
do you like better? Is there a better? Is there what are maybe the ups and downs of both new construction and the service side?
There's pluses and minuses. New construction is pretty consistent, especially right now. It seems like there's more work than we can possibly handle. We're able to keep people busy year round. You can take people that don't know heating and air conditioning and teach them within about 3 months to cut metal, bend shape, and they can become really good installers. So it's kind of a really good training ground for a lot of people. The profits are not as high. A lot of hard work, some callbacks. Sometimes you're working in houses in the middle of the summer, middle of the winter, kind of not great conditions sometimes, but consistent work, and you can work really hard and learn the trade well in new construction. Service work is, you have to have more experience. When you're going to a customer's home, you have to really have good training and know how to fix things and know how to talk to customers. And so there's a lot that goes into that. We can hire somebody almost off the street to go do new construction and learn and build up to the point to where they could go into a customer's home and really start working on things, but it takes a lot of training to do that.
Gotcha. I know that hiring and just meeting, frankly, demand is something that's been really, really difficult in the HVAC space for as long as I've been involved with it, which has been a minute anyway. And and you talked about the training up, your people to do installs in the new construction side. Have you found that you predominantly have to hire people essentially off the street and teach them to be quality HVAC techs, or are you able to find good quality people, or has it been a combination of the two?
A combination of the two. Some of the best success we've had is taking somebody that just has really good work ethic, willing to learn, willing to work hard, and trained properly and given responsibilities, we've had people, that didn't know anything about HVAC, and within 2 to 3 years become really fantastic lead installers. And sometimes you get somebody that has several years of experience and they've learned it a certain way, or they feel like they may be better than they are, or whatever the case might be. So we've almost had better success with people that we've brought in and kind of raised up to do heating and air.
Gotcha. Well, that makes a lot of sense too. Coming back to kind of the business then as a whole, we do talk about marketing on this quite a bit. So let's dive in here for just a moment.
Okay.
So obviously on the new construction side of things, it's really about relationships with builders at that point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And do you have somebody that's dedicated to doing that on your team?
We have some contractors that have been with us for 18, 19 years, or we've been with them, whatever you want to say.
Gotcha.
People, they know us, they trust us, we do good work, we price it well, and they just know that they're just going to continually give us work. We have several contractors like that. And in the very beginning, we really didn't spend any money on marketing. I mean, there was a time that we were only new construction, and once you have those relationships with some good builders, they just could keep feeding us the work, and so we really didn't have to advertise.
Gotcha. And was it when you launched the service side then that you had to get more into the advertising side of it?
Yeah. There was a time that if we got a service call, it was kind of a nuisance. We didn't know what to do with it, and because all of our guys were installers. Sometimes I was running them myself, but trying to run the crews. And so I remember when we first hired our one guy that would come in and do service work, but we didn't have enough work for them full time. And so we had to make a conscious decision about 10 years ago that we were going to develop that service department. I mean, we now have a pretty large service department with the service manager and everything else, but service is quite different because if you're gaining new clients, there's a lot of people out there that don't know who we are, and that's been a big challenge for us over the years, is how to reach people. We have a good product, but who knows that we even exist?
Sure. Well, I could see that being a little problematic coming out of new construction, or primarily doing new construction, because it's a different animal, right? You're obviously working with a general contractor or a builder on the one side, and then when it comes to the service side, it's all marketing. What has been, special sauce, if you will, or secret to success in terms of winning in the service game when it comes to the marketing side of it?
As of right now, we do a lot. I mean, but it's been kind of a gradual process. In the very beginning, we just tried doing like money mailers, something that we could afford that wasn't, it didn't take a lot of marketing skills. We were able to just kind of put an ad out with some discounts and stuff like that. And that seemed to get a little bit of traction. And then we now have billboards up, but that took us a few years. We have a steady billboard that's there for the year, and then we have like the digital billboards that are on the freeway. We did a TV commercial the first time about 3 years ago, and that got a lot of traction. I think just kind of name development, but one of the big things, truly, as I think about it, about 10 years ago, most of the vans that we had were just white vans. We didn't even have them labeled or anything.
Oh, really? Okay.
And my wife does all their marketing. Marie is her name. She's really amazing with kind of just seeing. She has an eye for marketing, and we had teamed up with a company that would put wraps on the vehicle, and they would send us over some designs. And she said, "No, I don't like that," and redid it until it got to the point where we said, "Okay, that's a really good design." And now that I think has brought more name recognition than about anything, because we have about 30 trucks that are going all over Utah County, Salt Lake County, Park City, and I have so many people say, "Gosh, you guys are everywhere. We see your vans everywhere." And so that is kind of the rolling billboard. So the wraps out there are a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I think given the investment and how many, in the digital marketing space, we talk a lot about impressions, right? And CPMs and different things. And I know they talk about that, a fair deal in the TV world as well, right? Or cost per 1,000 impressions. But the fact of the matter is you go wrap a vehicle for 4,000 thereabouts dollars, go drive it down the highway, and you're going to get far more than 1,000 impressions from Utah County to Salt Lake County.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think branding really then is such a big component of all of this. And I'm curious, when you went and wrapped all of the vehicles, did you notice what did that look like in terms of new customer development, and how long did that take for you to start to get that brand recognition?
It's really hard to track, truly, because when there's 5 or 6 things that we're advertising. Sometimes in the beginning, and just we're amateur marketers, especially in the beginning. My wife has done really well to advance things, but we would put a different phone number, say, on the van versus in the money mailer, so that we could try to track who was calling from where. But then we would get a lot of people that would see us on Google, but what we didn't know is if they saw our truck driving down the street and then they just searched us and found us. And so I don't know if I could have an answer to that, because it just seemed like maybe they saw a money mailer, then they saw the billboard, and then they saw the van, and then their furnace broke, and so who was that company? They found us online and called us, and so it's been hard for us to really break that out.
Well, I think there's something to be said too about the adage that, and I don't know where the statistic comes from, but it's like it gets thrown around in the marketing world on an almost nonstop basis, that somebody has to be introduced to your brand 6 to 10 times before they're going to take some sort of action and engage with you, right? So with all of that said, and kind of just parroting back what you just said, they see our branded truck. They see our branded truck a few extra times, right? Maybe they catch that commercial on television, and then and they're starting to develop some brand awareness, and then they're driving down the freeway, they see a billboard, and then at some point, all of this happens when they have an HVAC concern, and hopefully they remember who you are, right? Because that brand is starting to stick out, because they've been exposed to it enough times. They go, I'm going to go now out to Google, which is where people now research everything, right? Since Google Places back in, 2007, 2006, right? I think is kind of when that started to become a real big thing, or at least when I started kind of getting into Google Places at the time, and they started adding those reviews to it. Mm-hmm. And now, obviously, we all go to Google to check out a company's reputation. And in fact, I think you were sharing that you were listening to a podcast that I did a little while back about reviews, right? When Google, just not that many months ago, all of a sudden companies lost just a ton of their reviews. Yeah. And it just speaks so much to how much your brand is on Google, It really does.
Well, that was a huge push we had for a long time, was Google review, because we felt like that was the one way. And so we've done everything we can to really do a good job so that customer will praise our name and give or speak well of us. And
sure.
And we've been asking if please give us a review if you like it. And so we have a 4.9 star and over 1,000 reviews, which is, I think, small compared to a lot of companies, but that's been a part of the business development that we've been trying to, we know that people look at that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, frankly, once you start getting much over a couple hundred reviews, it doesn't have the same weight at 1,000 than it did at 200 is kind of the point. And we see that a lot in local search rankings and things along those lines, but there's no doubt about it. One way or another, everything just works better if you're getting consistent positive reviews from clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it has to be consistent, right? Like if we stop getting those reviews now, I feel like that takes away from people finding us.
It will, for sure. It's interesting because I can't show this in a podcast necessarily, but we use what's called the local heat map report when we look at local rankings, right? Because there's two ways to show it. Well, there's several ways to show up on Google, but we're talking about the free ways, okay? Or the less expensive ways if you're hiring an agency to do this. But you can show up in the map section, which is those first 3 spots that usually pull up organically for keywords like AC repair near me or HVAC or that sort of thing. Or you can show up organically, which is usually below the maps, right? And then obviously you've got ads and LSA and everything else up at the top. But what we are able to track at various latitude and longitude coordinates is how a company is showing up in Google Maps across a broad area. And what's interesting, we talk about that consistency of reviews. And another way of saying that is review velocity. And when a company has good review velocity, meaning they're getting that, or so let's say that they go from getting a couple reviews a week, okay? And then all of a sudden we go in and put some sort of a promotion in place with our employees, which tends to work really, really well when it comes to review getting. Hey, we're going to run a competition. First place winner who gets the most amount of reviews in a month wins $500, and or some type of thing, and then maybe there's a second prize, right? So you institute a little bit of competition amongst your employees to go out and get social proof on Google about your business. And if all of a sudden you go from getting a handful of reviews a week to getting 10, 15, 20 reviews a week, we can track what's happening with those map rankings, and we can watch that map expand outwardly so that you're showing up more in those 1, 2, 3 spots. And it's this really interesting thing to watch. And in fact, we work with a commercial cleaning company out of Orem called Absolute Janitorial Services. And real similar thing where for like janitorial and commercial related keywords, they were doing okay with everything that we're doing, but we went and implemented a competition to get reviews, and now they've really taken over as the dominant force there. And if you're anywhere in Utah County and you look for a commercial cleaning company, you will find them. They will show up number one pretty just consistently across the board. And I attribute all of that to review velocity. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. And the thing that I tell, companies, especially that are just getting started out, if you just go focus on getting reviews, doing a good job for your customers, getting those reviews, the calls will follow.
Yeah, I think so. Now, question I have for you is what happens at the end of that competition when the reviews drop a little bit, or, because we've done that where you get kind of a big bolst of reviews,
right,
and then we didn't keep up the competition or something, it kind of drops off. Is that a negative thing?
It can. It's not a negative thing, but it is, Google's all about trending. Without going, super deep into this, Google's often looking for trends, right? They're looking for popularity. They're looking for, if there's a hot topic on social media that's blowing up all over Facebook, right? They want to be cued into that. If there's a hot topic happening somewhere on the internet, they want to direct attention toward that. Because if you think about what they're trying to do, they're trying to get people to spend as much time as possible on Google, and they're still trying to give people the best search results. And that's why Google really became the dominant player in the first place. And so the way that they do that is by consistently trying to offer up the best search results and those trendy things that are happening and whatever else. And so I think that there's an element of that that's built into their local algorithm as well when it comes to reviews. But it's also the updates that you can make on your Google business profile. And how frequently you're posting to that, whether or not you're posting images up there, because they're taking those, when I go take my iPhone as an example and take a picture somewhere, it's recording the latitude, the longitude of that actual picture. And so Google uses that to go, oh, look, Authority Heating is doing jobs here. They're doing them there. They're doing them over here. Let's try to send, and we know, before I get too far ahead, and we know that their average reputation is 4.9 stars and they've got over 1,000 reviews. So at this point, they're a trusted entity in Google's eyes. And when you guys start running promotions on Google Business Profile, or you start posting a bunch of pictures, or you start getting a bunch of reviews, or any of those things that really are what we call local signals, then Google's going to follow that. And they're especially going to follow that because you're a trusted source. Okay. They know who you are. You've been around for a while. And so one of the big challenges that we run into on the marketing world, honestly, is taking companies that aren't established, that don't have that brand, and trying to get out there and take out guys like you that have been after it for a while. And it takes a while, it does take a while. So anyway, well, thanks for kind of diving into that. I know you said that you're also doing some television and different things. I think the last thing that I will say about that too is that we do quite a bit with television and CTV specifically. And the big thing that we always notice is that when we start to do any type of offline, marketing, and CTV is kind of offline, kind of not, obviously it's still online. But if we go set up a billboard, okay, Google has really no way of knowing what you're doing offline. But they can absolutely track what's happening on their search engine. And so the other thing that I always, and let people know too, is that yes, anything you do offline is going to ultimately affect the Google ecosphere, because one way or another, and you already alluded to this, whether they see your truck, they see the billboard, they hear your radio ad, they see your TV ad, they're going to go to Google and they're going to Google Authority Heating and Cooling. And when they do, they're tracking that. And if you've ever looked inside of Google Search Console, you can actually see how many times a month people are actually typing in your business name and and what percentage of those people are actually going through and hitting your website. And if you've got it set up in analytics to be able to track those as goals, then you can actually track that all the way back to a sale if that's what you want to do. And so one thing that we have noticed, regardless of what type of offline campaign you're running, we will see a spike in brand traffic.
Okay.
For people looking for Authority Heating and Cooling, or whatever company is running that ad, right? And that also has a real natural lift in SEO. So one way or another, it's all tied together. And I think that where it used to be all about let's put our advertising dollars here and our advertising dollars there, because those are the two best sources in terms of return on investment. Nowadays, it's really about having an omnipresence type of strategy. And I think that that's where some of us old dogs can get a little bit stuck, frankly, because it's like, why does it matter what we're doing on Facebook? Well, because Google's indexing Facebook too, right? And why does it? And they're using that to determine what's trending, and they're paying attention, and they're trying to get on that bandwagon too. And so it all winds up just kind of filtering in. Enough about all of that right now. What I'm really interested in hearing more about is this transition that you guys made. And you had talked about doing some coaching and some different things along these lines, but you kind of just, you'd kind of plodded along for some time, and then all of a sudden really just had this real big uptick in terms of sales, in terms of growth. So tell me more about that, and tell me more about your success there.
Oh gosh, there's so much. But the big thing that happened to us about 10 years ago, I wasn't full in. I mean, I was kind of doing a business, but I wasn't really fully invested in it. I had different hopes of doing something else. And there was a point in time when kind of had to make a decision on whether we were going to do heating and air or, get out and do something different. Mm-hmm. And it was really my wife, Marie, that one day just kind of said, look, if we're going to do this, let's do it. And that's at the point that we made the decision. We set some really specific goals. We joined a place called Praxis University. So it's a place that trains heating and air conditioning companies on how to run a business. And I needed that. I mean, I knew how to do heating and air, but I had never had 15 employees and then 20 employees and 25.
Right.
And it got really hard to manage, and it got hard to, you have receivables, payables, and callbacks, and just everything that goes along with that. And so it was a mind shift, I think, that we fully dedicated and set like a 5-year and a 10-year plan. We were going to hit certain things. And at that point, we had never come up with core values. We had never come up with like a vision or had really specific goals on where we were trying to get to. And it was this Praxis University that they kind of helped coach us through that. And part of that was, advertising was a big part of that. They would show us proper ways to reach people. I mean, just a lot of talk with them. And part of the coaching was with them. That there's a big company, Hiller Heating and Plumbing, back in Nashville, Tennessee, and they're a pretty large outfit that's tied in with Praxis University. And so they would show us what they're doing for marketing. In fact, share their marketing ideas with us and say, here, we spent a whole bunch of money on this ad. Just put your logo on it, and you put it out. So they kind of helped us put together some things that way. So it's hard to pinpoint any one time, but we kind of made a mental shift and said we're going to do this. For years and years, we really just did new construction. And it wasn't until we joined Praxis University where they showed us the beauty and getting the service department built up. We now have many customers that we have a maintenance program where we go out twice a year, do really great work for them, and kind of build that relationship with them. And that just kind of leads to consistent work with them as well. Once you have a customer that a new customer in the door, we want to retain them. And then we don't have to advertise to that customer again because we have consistent work with them for years. So a lot of talk about retention. What do we do to make sure we take really good care of that customer? And so it was, acquiring a new customer. And then when they come in, what do we do to make sure that they don't ever want to leave? And we just take really good care of them that way. We didn't really know where to begin. And I remember sitting with some advertisers at the time, and we said, okay, what's going to get us the most? I mean, how are we going to get the name out? Nobody had a solid answer. I mean, obviously, like if I asked you that, you probably wouldn't be able to say, we'll just do that.
Right. There's no one thing, right?
Right. And that's what was a little frustrating in the beginning because we had limited money to spend on marketing, and we didn't know exactly what it was going to be first. So we kind of chose something that was, kind of the least expensive thing we could do, and which was kind of a money mailer just to start getting our name out there. But then it was the wraps, and eventually did the TV commercial. But this popped into my head that I'll say that I think is funny. I mean, I started the business in 2006. I placed an ad in the paper at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that shows you that in that amount of time, I remember it was like $150. It's a lot of money for me at the time, and it just said, "I do heating and air conditioning." and
You mean the newspaper, right? The black and white?
the black and white.
Okay.
I mean, believe it or not, that was still, and that was only 20 years ago. And it was just like a little ad, and we got some people to call us from that we still do work for today that turned into like big relationships. And so, small little things, people just know who you are. But the biggest thing is, again, that I think is the most critical is that was 20 years ago, and we still do work with those people. So it's just the retention part of it too. Advertising, I think, is huge to get in the door. But if we don't fulfill like something well for the customer that they want, that they feel good about who we are and what we did, we won't get them back. And so our big thing is to retain, take really good care of them so they want to keep calling us back.
I think you're just spot on, in terms of just the strategy there for people from the outside looking into the HVAC industry. Especially I think consumers, they see these ads for, a $25, $30 tune-up. It's a loss leader so that you can get in there and pick them up as a customer for life, right? Because I think it really is about the lifetime value of each and every customer. And with advertising costs just progressively getting higher and higher, the cost per click in HVAC is just, I feel like it doubles about every 4 or 5 years. And just continues to be more and more astronomical. And I think it's, that retention piece and really considering the lifetime value of each and every, customer is really, is massive, honestly. So that's my take on that anyway. So back to Praxis University here. So in addition, kind of like the helping you get your core values and mission statement and really kind of understanding how to advertise work, what assistance do these guys give you in terms of like KPIs as an example?
We use a software called Service Titan,
mm-hmm.
and it was in development. I remember this was back in 2018 that they were working with Service Titan to kind of develop specific KPIs for the HVAC industry. And so like when a service technician goes on a call, what's the ticket average? Did they offer the maintenance program? Did they sell the maintenance program? Did they show up on time? Just a ton of KPIs that matter for a technician. Same thing for salespeople and your close rate and different things like that. One of the big things with installers is we have a specific way of figuring how many hours a job should take, and then in Service Titan it'll track how many hours it actually took. We can pull reports and show percentages of what installers constantly coming in, better than expected and so forth. And so all those KPIs matter, but I didn't even really know where to begin with those until we joined a coaching company that just showed us, they would look at our books and say, okay, this looks good. Here's a couple broken bones right here, like your labor rate here and this and this and this. We can just kind of x-ray it and pinpoint some of the areas that you need to work on. And we just didn't even know exactly what rates or, what labor percentages should be and different things like that. That was the big thing that I needed. I'm a business major. I graduated with a degree in finance, and I know business-ish, but I know heating and air really well. But that doesn't mean that I can just know how to manage 20 people and then 30 people. And
I don't think even business school or like a master's in business administration really prepares you to manage a couple dozen employees.
Yeah, well, and that's what I needed. I just needed somebody that could coach us into that. One of the things, for example, I remember showing up. We signed up in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So we went back to Nashville, Tennessee. It was kind of like a kickoff thing, and they have a national convention where they talk to us about different ways of pricing. So they came up with what's called transparency pricing,
mm-hmm.
and that was a lot of people were kind of upset when they presented this because we're going to show customers how much things cost. In the HVAC industry for many years, we've had the luxury of kind of hiding that from people.
Sure.
And so they say, well, how much is a blower motor supposed to cost? And you just say, well, this is how much it costs, and they don't know.
Right.
But now the internet is there. And so the transparency pricing is we show them exactly how much it costs for the labor and the material. And a lot of people were pretty upset at that back in 2016. But that is now, they said, look, the internet's there. You have to assume that everybody knows exactly what your costs are. And if they find you're not being transparent with them, you're going to lose customers. And that was a big thing. But we went back to, they had a big warehouse and showed us, they had this beautiful van in there with a wrap on it, all the doors open, and they had like all of the parts, circuit boards, gas valves, igniters, all these things kind of specifically in these very specific bins laid out with part numbers. And they talked to us about like a replenishment process and how you track the parts that go on your van. And I looked at that and I thought, I don't even know how we could get there. That looks so difficult.
Right.
But they showed us how to track the inventory using the software. So when a technician goes to a house, they use a blower motor. They charge the customer for it. That goes back to a replenishment process that gets in our warehouse. They pull that part, put it in a bin that they put back on their van. I mean, there's a whole process that I don't know that we would have ever figured out how to do that. And they just showed us exactly how to do that step by step. Getting some coaching when I got to that point, I don't think I could have grown any further than where we were if we didn't have some people that were helping us. But
right.
Now we're growing. Now we have a lot of work to do and a lot of employees. Now we need more work.
Right.
And that's where we had never really advertised a lot to that point, and that's where we had to really start figuring out how to get the word out and advertise.
Fantastic. Now, you talked earlier, and I'm more just curious about this, about the warehouse and parts and different things. Are you guys at the point that you have, where essentially the distributors set up a little operation inside of your, do you know what I'm talking about? Like kind of like just-in-time inventory or something?
We're not set up like that. The supply house come to us twice a day or as needed to drop off parts and equipment and so forth. But I know that there are some companies that have been able to establish like a full-on supply house in their store, but I don't think we're big enough to do something like that at this point. In the replenishment process, it goes through the software. We have all of the inventory in the warehouse that we need to replenish the vans, and as the warehouse inventory deplenishes, then the supply house brings it to us. And so we just kind of have our own miniature store in our supply house or in our warehouse that's our stuff, our inventory.
Still, I mean, having them bring you, parts a couple times a day that's a great system, and why set them up in your operation if it's working the way that it's working, right? When you talk about Praxis University and implementing all of these things, what was the difference, kind of before and after in terms of maybe just overall your feel of the business, but then also how it was performing, revenue and profit wise?
We've just had really steady growth for years, but it exponentially went up when we joined. It's Praxis. It's a confusing Praxis. Praxis.
Okay.
But I've told this story before, so I'll just tell it. But I remember we were so busy, I could almost barely spend the time to go to these trainings with them. I mean, they have a lot of training. They have trainings for technicians and installers, and every week they have what's called a power hour. So it's like a owner/manager training. And they just talk about so many aspects of business. I remember sitting down with them the first time, and they had kind of a few things for me to complete first. And the first thing was they asked me to fill out our organizational chart. And I had no idea what to do. I mean, everybody was working. We all had stuff to do. And I kind of went through and mapped out, kind of put everybody in place. And I remember showing them that organizational chart, and they looked at me and kind of shaking their head. And that's not a proper chart. And just showed organization, having a structure so there's like a reporting system. But the big thing was they asked me the question, and they just said, if you could accomplish anything that you want with this business, what is it? What are you trying to do? You're working, you're making money, people are working, but are you trying to employ people? Are you just trying to make money and then sell and retire? Are you trying to do something good for the community? What are you trying to accomplish? And it had been 10 years at that point, and I didn't even know. I'm a good guy. I work hard for people. I help them, but I didn't have like a specific focus in mind. And so part of the exercise was sitting down and just really kind of mapping out, if I could do anything with this, but what is it? What is it that's deep inside of me that matters? And then they helped me create like core values of what do we stand for, and what can we pass on to customers? And that was a huge shift, because now we had a vision, now we had core values. Now in our company meetings, we're able to talk about those and create culture and talk about how we treat customers and why we treat customers this way. And that was a huge shift just in kind of becoming something that we hadn't been before. So now we actually became an entity with a purpose and with organization. and we didn't have that before. So that was something that I feel like was a huge shift for us. And then just kind of understanding, when you're in the kind of a group like this, I'm talking to contractors from all over the United States. And sometimes when it's somebody you're next door, you're nice to them, but they're kind of your competitor. But now you're talking to somebody that may be from Florida, and they'll spill their guts on everything.
Sure.
This is what we do. This is how we do it. And I've learned so much just from the other business owners out there. So sometimes just that collaboration. And then you see people that I didn't even know it was possible. We go to these conventions and you see they highlight people that are doing really well, and this is how they do it, and this is how they talk about it. And that alone was something that has helped just create a vision that I didn't know, trying to hit something that I didn't know was possible.
Gotcha. The big question looming in my mind about just hearing your story around this is, what was that vision, or what was that plan that came to that fleshed out of this process?
I'm a spiritual person. My parents raised me to follow Jesus Christ, and there's principles in the gospel of treating people a certain way, honest, kindness, fairness, and that is part of me. And so when I had to sit down and write this, I was writing out specific things on how I wanted to help people, not just customers, but then people that worked for me. How can I help these people become really, really good human beings? How can I help myself become a good human being? I've told it in our company meeting many times. I said I would rather lose money on a job than have any customer feel like we were unfair with them or dishonest. If we've made a mistake, we're going to own it. We will pay for it, whatever we have to do. But I want to build something to where people will know us and trust us for good people. And we're human. We're going to make mistakes. But if we make a mistake, we're going to own it. And I wrote these down in our core values, and then I started talking about that in every one of our company meetings, and just made sure that we will treat people fairly. And I tell the story, but I was a technician for a number of years. And, when you're a technician, you have an opportunity you make money by the hour, but also you can sell things and make a commission on it.
Sure.
And I remember many times standing in front of a customer, and I had a choice to make, because I knew if I told them one thing and led them down this path, they would buy a new furnace or air conditioner. But deep inside of me, I knew that I could just do this little repair, and that's a good system, and it's going to last a long time. And I had to consciously make the decision time and time again. I think of that customer as though it was my mom and dad. What would I tell them if it was my mom and dad? And if you think of it that way, I'm obviously going to do everything I can to do the absolute best scenario for them. And so I've talked about that, and I think there can be maybe some shady gray areas in this industry.
Sure.
Where a customer doesn't know. And if you tell them one thing, they're going to believe you, but sometimes that leads to maybe some greed and trying to sell something you shouldn't be selling. And so I tell all of our guys, don't sell something that they don't need. Be honest every time. And if we're doing a job today for somebody, it's because we formed an honest relationship with them 10 years ago, and we've taken care of them time and time and time again. And they don't even shop us because they know us, they trust us. And I think that's why it took so many years to get to where we're growing exponentially, because it's taken a long time to build that trust with so many people. In my opinion, that's the best advertising that we can do, because people, if they trust us and they know us, a lot of people have come to us. I'll get phone calls by people saying, hey, so-and-so said you did work for him and I shouldn't go anywhere else. And I say, please come in, we'll help you. And we had to create an identity, and that culture is what has drawn in. I feel like if you could see the installers and the technicians and the salespeople and the office staff and the warehouse people, everybody shares that culture. And I share that with them as they come in to interview. And we both know right off the bat if they're a good fit or not. But I feel like it's drawn in the best of the best, where we are legitimately trying to do the best possible job we can at the best price we can, and really, really take good care of that customer.
I think the key word that's coming up for me, even though you didn't say it, is integrity. I suspect that's probably one of your core values.
It is.
Yeah.
Attitude, effort, integrity, and skill. Those are our 4 core values.
I love it. I love it. Now, you had mentioned to me out of this process came sort of a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, and I recall you talking about market share and different things along these lines. Tell me a little bit more about what the plan is for Authority Heating, over these next, 5-10 years.
So back then, 2016, I had to set goals, and it's kind of like a vision board. And they said, clear your mind and just write down whatever.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wrote down is that we would become a household name in Utah County, but not just a household name, like a household name of honesty, integrity, where people would recognize us as an honest company. And I mean, we had unmarked vans.
Right.
We had very few people knew who we were. We were doing new construction, but that was a goal that was set. And we've said that every company meeting almost for 10 years. Household name. Well, I didn't even know how to get to that. Well, we learned recently, and I don't know if this is accurate, but once you own 10% of the market, or once you do 10% of all of the HVAC work in a market, that's how they define a household name. Whether that's true or not, that's what and so we went through an exercise to look at all the revenue that we had, and there's a way to kind of calculate how much revenue is in the HVAC total for Utah County.
Right.
And we calculated that we're about 3% of market share. I don't know how accurate that is, but I think it's kind of a start.
At least gives you something to work with.
Right. And so our goal is to get to now that we have a target, we want to get to that 10% market share. So we'll have to double or more our revenue, maybe quadruple to get to that point. But that's a goal we have. And we have, once there's, again, a target and a goal, and we talk about it in our manager meetings, we talk about it in the company meetings, very exciting because we have something we're shooting for. It's a target, and it's drawn in really, really good people into the company, and they love that goal, they love that vision, and we're headed that way.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think you've got your work cut out for you, honestly, a little bit. I mean, you're, obviously there's some pretty big competitors right in your backyard. And I think it was you that was telling me, and I kind of know this, to be true as well, that pretty much most of Utah County is private equity at this point, or private equity owned. How do you compete with, the quote unquote big boys, right, that are doing over $100 million a year and throwing $1 million a month into marketing and advertising?
They have advantages, and we have advantages because although it doesn't take us nearly as much money to run a business as it does one of those businesses. And so price is a competitive advantage. And I feel like we're very, very fair on the price. And so that's part of it. Now, you don't want to just be the lowest price. That kind of means maybe you're not doing a great job or something like that. So we're not necessarily the lowest price, but for the type of work that we're able to perform and the service we're able to provide, we're very price competitive against some of those companies. But I know some of the owners of those companies, they're really good companies. They're doing really good things, and I want to be friends with all of them. I don't want, we're competitors, but I feel like there's plenty of work for everybody. We don't have to be too competitive and mean to each other. And
True.
And I've become really good, close friends with a lot of the business owners around, and we kind of share ideas and help each other. And it's what I know is that the business principle of doing a good job, consistently doing a good job, doing it fairly. I mean, we have grown and grown and grown and grown, and I'm confident we will continue to grow. I have no doubts we will hit the goals we're headed to. And so the biggest thing for me that I say time and again is I don't want to lose the core values that we currently have, because sometimes as a company grows, it's harder to maintain those values, and different ideas come in and things like that. And so it's been hard to maintain the core values, but I'm dedicated to maintaining that for years to come.
It's all about sticking to your guns, I guess.
Yeah.
I love that. And I guess maybe to start to kind of wrap this up a little bit, we talk about acquisitions quite a bit on this particular podcast, and because there is this massive trend of private equity just kind of consolidating the whole the whole industry. Is there an exit strategy in mind for Anthon with Authority Heating and Cooling, or what would you like to see happen with your baby?
This is a topic that's been around for several years, and we have talked to several companies. I mean, almost daily, if not weekly, we get somebody reaching out wondering if we're for sale. Someday I have to retire. Mm-hmm. There's a business there, and so the question is, yes, what do we do with it? Because there's, maybe we have kids that want to take it over. That sometimes happens. Maybe there's the idea of private equity. I've had a little bit of a hard time with the idea of private equity. I've just kind of seen that potentially can change a company quite a bit, like culture-wise, and it
Sure.
kind of disrupts a bunch of things. And I'm concerned that I've built a name with thousands of customers, and they rely on us and trust us. And if a private equity came in and kind of raised the prices quite a bit, these customers wouldn't know it. They would just pay it, and they would find out later on. And I don't know. I take a lot of pride in the name that we've created of honesty and fair. And private equity firms are great. They have their place. I just know that sometimes there's a little bit of aggressive nature of trying to raise prices and make profits. That's not my goal in life necessarily. My goal in life is to help people and treat them fairly. So if I found an entity where I felt like it was our same core values and I knew that they would follow those core values, I would be very interested in them. Some of the people I've talked to over the past couple of years, I don't necessarily feel that would be there's more of a focus on the dollar.
Sure.
And I want somebody that's also focused on the customer.
I think that's really important. And as I'm interviewing HVAC and plumbing company owners from around the nation, that seems to be the number one fear, if you will, of everybody when they talk about, acquisition or private equity or things along these lines, is that, we don't want somebody coming in and blowing apart our culture. And unfortunately we've all heard the stories of when that happens, failed acquisitions, companies that just, roll up essentially. And I think that there is certainly private equity out there that's looking at, they're that with the intention of, we're going to go out and acquire like crazy, hold this for 5 years and then flip the whole package essentially. Right. And so it's more of a short-term play, but they obviously didn't spend, 20 years developing the business. And so, you're not alone, first of all, in the concern over what's going to happen if and when, you reach that point. Moreover, I applaud you for, for having that stance on it, right? And have you considered the idea of an employee purchase?
Kind of at the top of my list right now. I have people that have been with me for years and years and years, but I know that they have more years to go than I do.
Sure.
And so we have researched that pretty heavily, trying to find out how, if I felt like the employees could take it over and maintain that culture, they would benefit heavily, the customer would benefit heavily. I think it would be a really good opportunity. So that's at the top of my list right now, but I still feel like I'm at least 10 years away from even considering this. So I have a
Sure.
lot to go. So I haven't really dedicated a ton of time figuring that out right now, but
that's completely fair. You're too busy growing a business right now and creating a culture and a community, frankly. So, well, Anthon, this has been just fantastic, for me, and thank you so much for educating me and educating our viewers. If you were talking with, somebody who's just kind of getting started in the business, maybe even working, new construction right now, but looking to segue into service or just build something with, substantially, what advice would you offer?
best advice I can offer is do the best possible job you can every time. Don't cut a corner. If there was something wrong, own it, fix it. And you can't afford to lose any customer. You have to treat them so well that they will never leave you. You will never want for work. If you can do that, the word will get out, people will call you, and you'll grow. I feel like the second that you're dishonest with a customer and you lose them, you're going the wrong direction. You need every customer to know and trust you, and you just have to treat them fair on the price and do a really, really good job, and the company will grow.
I think that's some sage advice. Thank you for that. Well, folks, this has been really a lot of fun. Again, my name is Adam Loveridge with Job Calls. This is Anthon Mecham joining me with Authority Heating and Cooling out of Orem, Utah. Anthon, thanks so much again for sharing your story with us, sharing some of your insights, and I look forward to catching everybody on the next one.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.